Hello guys, in this video I'll teach you on how to create simple application that add two numbers in Flutter. Okay, so let's start by creating project. So the name of our application is My Simple Calculator. Then press enter. Choose the directory where you're going to save your project. Then wait until the Visual Studio load sources of your Flutter project. Then in our new project, we'll be removing some of the auto-generated codes here. And we'll start from the scratch. Okay, it's codes all the way here. So the application has a main function which is void main. Then inside of the main function we call the run app function that will execute the my app. In here, my app class extends to stateless widget. So let's create the missing override methods here. Okay, so an override function was created inside of the stateless widget. So let's remove this one. So we'll be returning the material app class. Then semicolon. So inside of the material app class, we'll be using the home property to specify the app bar of the application. Title colon. Then we'll be calling the text component to specify the title of our application, which is Simple Calculate. Okay. Then another property of the material app is the body. So in the body section of the application, we'll be creating another class. So as you can see, we extended the my app class to stateless widget. Meaning to say, if we use stateless widget, that means that our application is static. Okay, so if we want to make our application dynamic, we'll be extending our application, or we'll be extending our application to a stateful widget. Okay, so a stateful widget is dynamic. So if you are creating an application that changes during user interaction, then you need to extend it to a stateful widget. So basically, if you are creating the main structure of your application, which is the app bar and the body, you can use the stateless widget. But on the body part, it should be extended to stateful widget. So we'll be creating another class, which is let us name it as my calculator class. Then we'll be creating this class using the quick fix, and then creating the my calculator class. And so our my calculator class will be extended to stateful widget. Inside of our my calculator class, we'll be creating a state. So it is another class that extends to another subclass, which is state. So if you are creating a dynamic application, you will be needing two subclasses, which is the stateful widget and the state widget. So in here, we just created the stateful widget, but for the state, we need to define a state here. So we'll be creating another class. We'll just name it to underscore compute sum. Then we'll be defining a create state here equal to underscore compute sum. Then open close, then semicolon. Then in here, we'll be using the quick fix, and we'll be creating a create class compute sum. Then this one will be extended to state. Okay. Then in our state, we'll be calling an override, which is the at override widget build context. So we'll be removing this statement. Okay. So in here we have a missing component. Okay, so there is an error here because we have missed the scaffold class. It should be scaffold class. Inside of the material app, will be calling the scaffold. Then inside of the scaffold will be the home. So material app, home, scaffold, app bar. So we have the missing app bar property here. So that's it. So we need to move that to like this. So we forgot to specify the scaffold class in our application. So do not forget material app, then home property, then we'll be calling the scaffold to specify the app bar and the body of our application. So we fix the problem here, so we'll move to our compute sum. So in here, we'll be defining the body of our application. So we'll be returning returning a container first. So take note that you need to return first the container or the layout of our application before we specify the different components. So we'll be starting from text field. The first component that will be discussed is the text field. Okay, so we'll be calling the child property of the container first, then specify text field. So that's our text field. Okay, then let's try to run our application first. So our application is already running. So let us check. So here is the text field that we created in our application. So you can try by typing text. Okay. So it is working. The title of our application is also specified, which is simple calculator. Then what we need to do is to add another text field into our project. So to do that, we'll be needing another layout, which is the column layout. So meaning to say, if we say column layout, the components will be arranged one after the other, or the another text field that will be added will be placed below of the first text field. So to do that, let us use this feature, and then we'll be using the wrap with column, or you can do that manually, but since the IDE is suggesting to this, then we'll just use this feature. So as you can see, a column layout was added to our project, and it has a property which is children. So there are layouts na yung property niya ay child, which is, ibig sabihin yan, isa lang yung pwede niyang i-accept na component. While the column component or the column layout can accept multiple components. So from child to children. So that means it can accommodate multiple components inside of this column layout. So from that, we can add another text field, then try to save our project, and let us see if the text field will be added. So as you can see, there are two text field in our project. So another is a button. So the name of the button is, we'll be using the raise button, and then in the raise button we need to specify the label of the raise button. So we'll be using the child property of the raise button, and then we'll be using the text component. Then inside of the text component, we'll be specifying compute. Okay, then let us try to save our project. So by default, the compute button is disabled. So to enable this button, you need to specify, or you need to change the value into open close parenthesis and open and close brace. Inside of the early braces, you can specify the function later on that will be executed once the user press the raise button. So let us try again our application by saving it. Just press Ctrl S, and look, compute button is enabled. So let us customize this text field by adding label or hint text for the user to know ano yung i-input niya dito sa text field natin. So the first property that we'll be using is the decoration, and we'll be calling the input declaration class. Okay, input decoration class, for us to use the label text property. Then specify the label, enter value for num1, or enter value for num1, and try to refresh our application by pressing the Ctrl S. So as you can see, there is a label of our, so as you can see, a label was provided to our text field. So in our second text field, there is no label, but for our first text field, merong label na ilagay. Okay, so next is the hint property. Okay, the hint text property. Okay, hint text property is the same with placeholder in HTML. Okay, so we'll be putting this input value for number, and then hit Ctrl S. Then check natin yung ating output. So as you can see, there is a label at the top of our text field and hint text. So pag nag-type tayo ng value, yung hint text will be hide. Okay, so then once we remove the data inside of our text field, the hint text will appear in text field. So that is how we are going to put a label of our text field using the decoration property, and we'll be calling the input decoration component. Then we'll be copying this one and we'll be paste to our second text field, and we'll be replacing these two, num2 and num2, and Ctrl S. Then our output will look like this. So the next thing that we need to do is, where are we going to display the result? So for the meantime, we'll be using another component, which is the text component. So the result will be displayed here in our text component. Now, to access the property or to get the value of these two text fields, we'll be using, or we'll be declaring a text editing controller in our class. So outside of the widget build function, we'll be declaring a text editing controller. Then the name of our variable is tf num1 is equal to text editing controller, then semicolon. So why do we need to do this? Because we can directly access this text field without defining a text editing controller. So text field has a property of controller, In this way, we could access the value or the text value of this text field. So the controller here will be linked to our text editing controller we define at the top of our function, the widget build function. So we'll be copying tf num1 and we'll be placing it here. Without this, we cannot manipulate the text field, text property, or the value of the text field. Okay, so let us try to display the user input in text field in text property. So to do that, we'll be creating a function that will be executed once the raise button was pressed by the user. Okay, so the name of our function is add to number, open and close parenthesis. So this function was not yet created, so we'll be creating this function. We can create it here, void add to number, so wrong spelling, so it should be void add to number. So to dynamically change the value of this text property, we'll be defining another variable, string variable, string output is equal to empty. Okay, so the output variable will be pasted here. Okay, so this will hold the result of the sum later on, but for the meantime, this will hold the value of the text field once the user input a value to the text field and the user press the compute button, will display the value in text component or in the text component. Okay, so to do that, we'll be using the set state function. The use of the set state function is to refresh the state of our application. Okay, so using the set state function, we'll be assigning the value of the tf num1 or the first text field to the output variable. So as you can see, we'll be getting the value of the tf num1 and we'll be assigning it to, or we'll be storing it to, the output variable, and the output variable is the text value of the text component. So let's try to save our application, and then let's try to input a number, then let's try to press the compute button. So as you can see, the value of the first text field is displayed to the text component. For example, you place it with your name. Then compute, then Manila Cruz will be displayed. So let us continue the application by getting the two values, then be adding the two values, and the result will be displayed in a text property or text component. Okay, so to do that, we'll be defining again the controller for the second text field, and we'll name it as tf num2. Okay, so then we'll be copying this one, df num2. Okay, then we'll be performing addition to our application. So we'll be defining a variable sum here, be initializing it time, initializing it to 0, and then we'll be defining another variable which is var n1 is equal to 0, then var n2 is equal to 0. So var n1 will hold the value of the first text field, and var n2 will hold the value of the second text field. So in our set state function, we'll be adding to our, or we'll be adding another statement to our add to number function. Okay, so n1 is equal to tf num1 dot text. Okay, so you will be encountering an error here since n1 is initialized to 0. That means n1 is an integer data type. So for tf num1 dot text, this one is a string data type, or it has a string data type. So to do that, we'll be converting it explicitly using the int.parse method. So tf num1 dot text. So the value of the tf num1 dot text will be explicitly converted to an integer data type using the int.parse method. So we'll be copying this one and changing it to n2 and tf num2. Then the next statement that will be created is the formula, which is sum is equal to n1 plus n2 semicolon. So don't forget to end your statement semicolon. Then the sum will be assigned to our output variable. So